This book took me a while to get through, and I was super excited about this, but then the more I got into it, the less excited I got, but I didn't want to quit because I feel like I needed to beat the book, and I finally finished it. Finally, my review on The Recognitions by William Gaddis. This book was first published in 1955, but this edition was published by Dalkey Archive Press in February of 2012. This book has 956 pages and it has 1,891 ratings on Goodreads. This book touches on the idea of forgery, fakes, authenticity, art, original thought, originality, and also it's like a social commentary and social criticism on modern, or at that time, modern life. And what it's, I guess the main character is named, what is he named? Because they stopped saying his name, like, less than halfway through the book. They stopped saying this main character's name. I guess he's the closest thing to a main character. The main character, I guess his name is Wyatt Gideon, and he is a tortured artist. The first part of the book mostly covers his father, and his father is a reverend, and his mother dies on the way to Spain. His father buries her in Spain, and he continues to go around, and he eventually comes back, and a lot of people disapprove that he buried her with a bunch of evil Catholics. This book has a lot of anti-Catholic sentiments, or a lot of characters expressing anti-Catholic sentiments. And I have a feeling that William Gaddis feels like a lot of the things in Catholicism are bullshit, because there's even a touch of like people scamming, or people like even trying to make up saints for the sake of a profit. Reverend Gideon is from a long line of ministers, and his son, who stayed behind, is like 4, and it's kind of expected he's going to become a minister, but the father is kind of not really into it anymore, and it kind of seems like he's like feels trapped by his position, and he kind of doesn't want that for his son. So then he sees that the same expectations are kind of being forced upon his son by his sister, who's really kind of crazy religious, and she like gives like a 5-year-old a book of martyrs and how they all got tortured. So if that gives a hint of how this kid was raised, it's kind of radical, just like kind of intense. And then eventually this kid, he grows up, Wyatt grows up, and he becomes an artist, and The Recognitions is it's talking about like a religious painting that he starts recreating, and he also starts recreating the painting of his mother. And so eventually he goes off to Paris and he tries to make it as an artist, and he decides to not pay off a corrupt critic. And so the critic says all of his art is shit, essentially, and so his career is over. Like, he just starts doing drafting drawings for like bridges for this guy, and then eventually he starts doing counterfeit paintings. And what he does is he does counterfeit paintings, not reproductions of famous artists' paintings, but what he does is he does paintings in a particular style, and they say like, oh, this is the lost Van Gogh, or whatever artist they keep mentioning. And I think he pretty much specializes in Flemish paintings of a particular period, and he gets a serious moral dilemma in it. And then other stuff happens, like a lot of other stuff. Like what I just described pretty much takes up like 30% of this book, and that's how it felt to me. It kind of seems like a really long time between actually getting back to Wyatt, and then the wife gets involved with someone, and then it starts following him and then his social circle. There are no quotation marks, it's all just dashes and someone says something. And so William Gaddis intentionally wrote this to be hard to follow, the conversations, but I think it wasn't that hard for me because I felt that he wrote the voices very well. I mean, there are certain things that certain characters said, or they said in a particular way, or what they were talking about, or it's not like people had a catchphrase, but he even wrote accents in there, like crossed, like you know who's saying that, so you know who's talking. And it's really, like I said at the beginning, this character, they stop saying his name. You never see the name Wyatt Gwenyan again really after the first part. Even when he reappears in a context that he hasn't been in a long time, they don't say his name, but you know it's this character because of how the characters are reacting. It's like, oh, it's you! You're back! Are you back to stay? And you're like, oh, it must be this guy. And also by how he talks, because he kind of talks a bit crazy. Like, he keeps going off of tangents and mentioning, like, it mentions a lot of, like, really obscure religions, really obscure texts, art texts, a lot of lines said in different languages. I mean, there are plenty of, like, there's, like, sometimes line after line of dialogue in different languages, and in French, Spanish, German. I think that's pretty much it, the different languages that are spoken in this book. Maybe Portuguese? I don't know. Yeah, I follow the French pretty well, I think. And so, yeah, I thought that was an interesting part, that, you know, you got a sense of these characters, not necessarily by too much physical description, but by how they talked and how people responded to them, and the dynamics in the dialogue. And sometimes that's all there is. It's just dialogue, and it seems like you're just like a fly on the wall in a room listening to all these different conversations, and you're like zoning in and out of some conversations and getting pieces of other conversations, and it's like you're listening to one conversation and then suddenly you overhear a completely different conversation briefly, but then you go back to the same conversation, especially at the Christmas party. That was interesting. That really dragged on for me, though. Getting more honest about this book, the thing about this book is that it's like trick-or-treating in a town where all the houses are 10 miles apart. And so you're reading, you get to a house, and you're like, great, candy, awesome, let me get to the next house. And then you're walking, 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 and you just keep walking, and then you're like, when is the next house? Damn it, when is the next house? And then you find the house again, and you're like, it's awesome. You get candy again. And that's what this book felt like. You know, I was reading, and a lot of times it felt like I was like kind of trudging through it. I understood what was going on, but I wasn't necessarily engaged or impressed. But every now and then there comes like a gem of something that is extremely quotable, or extremely seem really profound, or just really insightful that I really appreciated, or an interesting little device where, you know, you keep hearing the advertisements, and I thought the advertisements were clever and I really enjoyed those, but they're not the main part of the book, they're not the meat of the book. And so it kind of seems like it felt like this book could have been like 40% of this book could have been cut out and it wouldn't have lost anything, and it would have actually been more engaging. It kind of kept going, dragging on and on and on, and it kind of seemed like without point, like this book is for the most part plotless, really plotless, even though I described the sort of main character at the beginning and where his arc is going to go. That is not the main part of the book, and the main part of the book is just stuff. It's all kind of alluding and all kind of dancing around the idea of originality, art, authenticity, and just some anti-Catholic things, I guess. Yeah, it kind of sometimes felt like I was kind of forcing myself through this, and I just felt like stubborn enough to I just want to finish this, and this book will not beat me. I mean, it had parts in it that did keep me reading, and there were some times where I felt I hit a stride with it, and other times I felt I was just trudging through it, and there was nothing much I was getting from it. Yeah, this is a long review, but this was a long book, and I had to talk about my feelings. And I don't know, I'm just kind of baffled at, like, how so many people just love this book. I mean, it has gems in it. Like, it does have, like, really good parts. I felt like the first and the last parts were the most coherent and enjoyable to read. The middle part, I think I could have just done without. It's getting so much darker. my lights leave me. The only light I have is my laptop. And then the killer comes behind me. But I definitely will still read William Gaddis' next book. I am planning on reading JR. I've heard that it had won awards. It is celebrated. JR was what William Gaddis became famous for. And actually, initially, the reviews for this by the critics were bad as well. So I feel like if I read JR and I read the rest of William Gaddis' work, maybe I might revisit this to see if I feel different about it, because only after, you know, people knew about William Gaddis' other works and they experienced him at his best, they revisit this and then like, oh my god, this is like another masterpiece of his. Why didn't people love this first? And it's like, maybe because they didn't read his other works. I don't know. So I'm still excited about reading JR because that is kind of got good reviews right off the bat and didn't need to stew for a bit like this did. I'm not knocking him. This is his first novel, so I don't blame him too much. I can tell he wrote this for a really, really long time, and there was probably a gap of time in between first and second parts. He definitely spent a long time on the second part, and I kind of don't think he should have spent so much time. So yeah, I gave this 2 out of 5 stars. Got through it. It didn't beat me. I could say I read The Recognitions by William Gaddis. That is my review. I hope you guys enjoyed it and saw that it was steadily growing darker. Alright guys, bye!